You settle into the soft darkness of evening, where shadows blend with memory and the world grows quiet around you. Tonight, we journey together through the mist-covered hills of Ireland, where ancient stories drift like whispered secrets on the wind. These are tales of the Banshee, that mysterious figure who walks between worlds, neither fully of the living nor completely of the dead. Close your eyes and let your breathing slow. Feel the weight of the day lifting from your shoulders as we explore these gentle mysteries together. The Banshee is not what modern stories have made her out to be. She is not a creature of terror, but rather a guardian of memory, a keeper of old sorrows and ancient knowledge. In the rolling green countryside of Ireland, where stone walls divide fields that have been tended for generations, people still speak of her in hushed tones, not from fear, but from respect. She is the one who knows when change is coming, when the old ways must give way to the new, when families must say farewell to those they love. You find yourself walking along a narrow country road, your footsteps soft on the worn stones. The air smells of rain and wildflowers, of peat fires burning in distant cottages. This is where our stories begin, in this place where the veil between worlds grows thin, where the past and present dance together in the fading light. The first story takes you to a small cottage nestled in a glen, where the River Shannon makes a gentle bend. You approach the house as twilight settles over the countryside, painting the sky in shades of lavender and grey. The cottage sits quietly among ancient oak trees, their branches heavy with leaves that rustle softly in the evening breeze. You notice the way the light from the cottage windows glows warm and golden against the gathering dusk. Inside, you can imagine a family finishing their evening meal, the soft murmur of conversation mixing with the gentle clink of dishes being cleared away. This is the kind of place where stories are born, where the old ways still hold sway over the rhythms of daily life. As you draw closer to the cottage, you become aware of a sound that seems to drift on the wind. It is not quite music, not quite weeping, but something that falls between the two. A keening that rises and falls like the tide, ancient and mournful yet strangely comforting. You pause at the garden gate, listening to this ethereal melody that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The keening tells a story without flicker of candlelight dancing on the walls within. The keening grows slightly louder as you approach, and you realize that it comes not from inside the cottage, but from somewhere nearby in the garden. Among the rose bushes that line the cottage wall, you catch a glimpse of movement. A figure in flowing grey robes moves between the flowers, her long hair catching the last rays of sunlight. She moves with the grace of someone who belongs to this place, who has walked these paths for longer than memory can hold. This is your first glimpse of the Banshee, and you find that she is nothing like the fearsome creature of modern tales. Her keening continues, a song of remembrance that honours those who have passed from this world to the next. She tends to the roses with gentle hands, her touch causing the flowers to bloom more brightly in the fading light. You understand that she is not an omen of doom, but rather a guardian of memory, ensuring that love and loss are both honoured and remembered. The family inside the cottage goes about their evening routines, unaware of the gentle presence in their garden. The father reads by the firelight, while the mother mends a tear in her daughter's favourite dress. The children play quietly with wooden toys carved by their grandfather's hands. Life continues its peaceful rhythm, watched over by this ancient guardian who sings the old songs and keeps the old ways alive. As full darkness settles over the glen, the Banshee's keening gradually fades to a whisper, then to silence. She moves away from the roses and disappears into the mist that rises from the river. You are left standing in the garden, feeling the profound peace that comes from witnessing something sacred and timeless. You turn back toward the cottage, where the family has begun to prepare for bed. The children are called in from their games, their voices bright with laughter as they share the day's small adventures with their parents. The mother lights a candle to guide them up the narrow stairs, while the father banks the fire for the night. This is the first lesson of the Banshee, that she comes not to frighten, but to bless. Her presence in the garden ensures that this family's love will be remembered, their stories preserved in the fabric of the place they call home. She is the keeper of continuity, the one who connects each generation to those who came before. You leave the cottage as the last light fades from the windows, carrying where travellers have paused for generations to rest and consider their path. The crossroads lies in open country, surrounded by fields where sheep graze during the day and owls hunt in the darkness. Ancient stone markers stand at each corner, weathered by countless seasons but still standing firm against the passage of time. These stones have witnessed the comings and goings of countless souls, each carrying their own stories and sorrows. You find yourself drawn to the centre of the crossroads, where the three paths converge in a circle of packed earth, worn smooth by the feet of travellers. The moon hangs full and bright overhead, casting silver light across the landscape and creating long shadows that dance and shift with each breath of wind. As you stand in this place of convergence, you become aware once again of that haunting keening that seems to be the Banshees' signature song. But here at the crossroads, the sound takes on a different quality. It becomes a harmony of voices, as if multiple Banshees have gathered to share their ancient wisdom with any who have the courage to listen. The keening tells of choices made and paths taken, of the moments in life when we must decide which way to go. It speaks of the weight of decision, the beauty of possibility, and the bittersweet nature of moving forward when it means leaving something behind. You feel the truth of this in your own heart, remembering times when you stood at your own crossroads, uncertain which way to turn. From the shadows at the edge of each road, figures begin to emerge. 3 Banshees, each dressed in robes that seem to shimmer between grey and silver in the moonlight. They move with the same ethereal grace you witnessed at the cottage, but here their purpose seems different, more solemn and ceremonial. The first Banshee approaches from the road that leads to the past. Her keening speaks of memory and tradition, of the importance of honouring what came before. She carries with her the weight of history, the accumulated wisdom of generations who walked these paths before us. Her presence reminds you that we are never truly alone, that we carry within us the strength and knowledge of all who came before. The second Banshee emerges from the road that represents the present moment. Her song is one of awareness and mindfulness, encouraging you to fully experience the beauty and complexity of the here and now. She reminds you that each moment is precious, that the graceful dance around the crossroads, their voices weaving together in a harmony that seems to encompass all of human experience. You watch in wonder as their dance creates patterns in the air, trails of light that form symbols you almost but not quite recognize. These are the signs and portents that the Banshees have always been said to bring, but you realize they are not warnings of doom. Instead, they are gifts of insight, offering guidance for those wise enough to receive it. As you stand witness to this ancient ritual, you feel a deep sense of peace settling over you. The anxiety that comes with uncertainty begins to dissolve, replaced by a quiet confidence that whatever path you choose will lead you exactly where you need to go. The Banshees' dance reminds you that there are no truly wrong choices, only different experiences that each offer their own lessons and blessings. The dance continues for what feels like hours but could have been moments. Time moves differently at the crossroads, where past, present and future converge in an eternal now. You find yourself swaying gently with the rhythm of their keening, feeling connected to something vast and timeless that encompasses all of life's journeys. Gradually, the 3 Banshees begin to fade back toward the shadows from which they emerged. Their keening softens to a whisper, then to a memory of sound that lingers in the air like the echo of distant bells. You are left alone at the crossroads, but you no longer feel the weight of decision that brought you here. Instead, you feel a lightness of spirit, a sense of trust in the unfolding of your own story. You know that whatever road you choose to follow from this place, you will carry with you the blessing of the Banshees and the wisdom of their eternal dance. The crossroads will always be here when you need to return, offering its gift of perspective and its reminder that all paths eventually lead home. Your path now leads you to an old cemetery that sits on a hillside overlooking a valley, where a small river winds between stands of willow and birch. This burial ground has served the local community for hundreds of years, its weathered headstones telling the story of generations who lived and loved and finally came to rest in this peaceful place. You enter through a gate made of wrought iron, its hinges creaking softly as it swings open to admit you, where their loved ones could rest with a view of the valley that sustained them in life. As you walk among the graves, you begin to notice small tokens left by visitors, fresh flowers placed on recent graves, smooth stones arranged in careful patterns on older ones, small mementos that speak of continuing love and remembrance. These offerings create a sense of living connection between the past and present, a reminder that death is not an ending but a transformation. The Banshee's presence here is different from what you experienced at the cottage and the crossroads. Here, her keening is softer, more intimate, like a lullaby sung to comfort children who are afraid of the dark. She moves among the graves with the reverence of one who understands the sacred nature of this place, her footsteps making no sound on the gravel paths. You catch glimpses of her throughout the cemetery, kneeling beside a child's grave to arrange wildflowers in a small vase, standing with bowed head beside a monument to a family lost in a long-ago epidemic, touching her fingers gently to the weathered stone of the oldest graves, as if reading the stories they contain. Her presence here is that of a caretaker and guardian, ensuring that none of the dead are forgotten, that their stories continue to be told, even when there is no one left among the living who remembers them personally. She is the keeper of the final chapter, the one who ensures that every life is honoured and every story finds its proper ending. As you follow the winding paths through the cemetery, you begin to understand that the Banshee's role is not to bring death, but to transform it from something fearful into something peaceful. Her keening acknowledges the pain of loss, while also celebrating the gift of having loved and been loved. She reminds you that grief is the price we pay for having experienced joy, and that both emotions are sacred parts of the human experience. You pause beside a grave marked with a simple stone bearing the inscription, "Beloved Mother and Wife." Fresh roses lie on the grave, their petals still heavy with morning dew. As you stand there, you hear the Banshee's voice more clearly, and you realize that her keening tells this woman's story. Her laughter, her kindness, the way she made her family feel safe and loved. The keening speaks of Sunday mornings when she would make special breakfast for her children, of evenings when she would read stories by lamplight while rain drummed on the roof. It tells of her gentle, greater than themselves. Her song speaks of young men who left their homes to answer their country's call, of the courage they showed in facing danger, and of the families they left behind. But even here, in the midst of acknowledging sacrifice and loss, her keening finds notes of hope and pride. She reminds you that these young lives, though cut short, were not lived in vain, that their courage and dedication continue to inspire others. As you reach the newest section of the cemetery, where the stones are still sharp-edged and the grass is carefully maintained, you encounter a different aspect of the Banshee's presence. Here, her keening is mixed with what almost sounds like whispered conversation, as if she is speaking directly to the recently departed, welcoming them to their new state of being. You sense that she serves as a guide for those who have just crossed over, helping them understand their new existence and find peace in their transition. Her presence offers comfort not only to the living who grieve, but also to the dead who must learn to let go of their earthly attachments and embrace whatever comes next. The moon has moved across the sky during your time in the cemetery, and you realize that dawn is not far away. The Banshee's keening begins to fade as the sky lightens in the east, but her presence remains, a blessing that will watch over this place of rest throughout the coming day. As you make your way back toward the cemetery gate, you carry with you a new understanding of death and remembrance. The Banshee has shown you that cemeteries are not places of endings but of continuation, where love transcends physical existence and stories live on in the keeping of those who remember. Your journey takes you next to a stone bridge that arches gracefully over a river that has carved its way through the landscape for thousands of years. This bridge is old, built in a time when craftsmen took pride in creating structures that would endure for generations. Each stone was chosen and placed with care, creating a span that has weathered countless storms and seasons while remaining strong and beautiful. You approach the bridge as the first light of dawn begins to paint the eastern sky in shades of rose and gold. The river below flows quietly, its surface broken only by the occasional rise of a fish or the wake of a duck swimming upstream. Willows along the banks dip their branches into the water, creating gentle circles of ripples that catch and reflect the growing light. The bridge itself shows the passage of time in the way that ancient things bridge. You feel the solidity of the stones beneath your feet, and the slight vibration that comes from the water flowing beneath. This is a crossing place, both literally and symbolically, where people have paused for centuries to rest and reflect on their journeys. The view from the centre of the bridge encompasses both directions of the river and the countryside beyond, offering a perspective that invites contemplation. Here, the Banshee's presence manifests differently than in the previous places you have encountered her. On the bridge, she appears as a figure of transition and change, recognizing the significance of crossing over from one state of being to another. Her keening carries the sound of flowing water, rising and falling like the river itself as it makes its eternal journey toward the sea. You see her standing at the far end of the bridge, her grey robes flowing in a breeze that seems to come from the water itself. She faces upstream, watching the river's source as if she can see all the way back to the springs and mountain streams that feed this waterway. Her posture suggests patience and wisdom, the understanding that comes from witnessing countless crossings and transitions. Her keening speaks of all the souls who have crossed this bridge throughout the years. Farmers bringing their goods to market, young couples walking hand in hand toward new homes, children running with the excitement of adventure, elderly people taking slow, careful steps as they make their final journeys. Each crossing has been a moment of change, a leaving behind of one thing and a moving toward another. As you walk slowly across the bridge toward her, you begin to understand that the Banshee sees bridges as sacred places, thresholds between one experience and another. She recognizes that crossing over, whether from life to death, from one phase of existence to another, or simply from one side of a river to the other, always requires a moment of courage and faith. When you reach the center of the bridge, you pause to look down at the water flowing beneath. The current is steady and purposeful, carrying leaves and small branches along with it on their journey downstream. You realize that this is another lesson from the Banshee, that life, like the river, is always in motion, always flowing towards something new, and that attempting to hold on to any moment too tightly is like trying to stop the water with your hands. The Banshee's keening intensifies as the sun rises higher, its light now fully illuminating the beings, but ordinary people beginning their daily journeys. A woman carrying a basket to market, a man leading a horse and cart, children walking to school with books strapped to their backs. Each of them crosses the bridge as naturally as breathing, taking for granted this solid structure that makes their travels possible. The Banshee watches each crossing with benevolent attention, her keening now soft and welcoming, like a blessing bestowed upon all who pass this way. You understand that she sees herself as a guardian of all transitions, whether great or small, recognizing that every crossing requires its own small act of courage and deserves its own moment of acknowledgement. As you prepare to complete your own crossing of the bridge, you feel a sense of completion that goes beyond simply reaching the other side. The bridge has taught you something about transitions, about the courage required to move from one state of being to another, and about the blessing that comes from those who watch over such moments. The Banshee's form begins to fade as the practical business of the day takes hold, and the bridge fills with ordinary travellers. But her presence remains in the solid stones beneath your feet, and in the sound of water flowing toward its destination. You carry with you the understanding that every crossing is sacred, every transition worthy of reverence, and that there are always guardians watching over those who have the courage to move forward into whatever comes next. The path you follow next leads to an old mill that once ground grain for the surrounding countryside, but now stands empty. Its great wheel still and silent beside the mill race that once powered it. This building represents the passage of time, and the way that human endeavours rise and fade, leaving behind structures that serve as monuments to lives lived and work accomplished. You arrive at the mill in the soft light of morning, when mist still rises from the mill pond, and the air carries the scent of wild roses growing along the stone walls. The building is larger than it first appears, with thick walls built to last and windows placed to catch the best light for the miller's work. Though abandoned, it retains a sense of dignity, like an elderly person who has lived a full and purposeful life. The great water wheel that once turned steadily, day and night, now stands motionless, its wooden paddles green with moss, and its iron fittings red with rust. Yet even the mill is that of a keeper of memories, one who ensures that the stories of this place are not lost to time. Her keening carries the sounds that once filled the air here, the rumble of the grinding stones, the splash of water over the wheel, the voices of people conducting the business of daily life. You find her inside the mill itself, moving among the silent machinery with the reverence of someone visiting a shrine. The great millstones still sit in their appointed places, circular monuments to the countless tons of grain they processed during their working years. Dust motes dance in the shafts of sunlight that fall through the high windows, creating an almost cathedral-like atmosphere. Her keening tells the story of the miller and his family, people whose names have been forgotten by most, but whose dedication and hard work fed their community for generations. She sings of early mornings, when the miller would arrive before dawn to begin his work, of the satisfaction he felt in producing something essential for his neighbour's survival. The song speaks of the miller's wife, who kept the accounts and welcomed customers while also managing her household and raising her children. It tells of seasons when the harvest was good, and the mill worked from sunrise to sunset, and of lean years when families brought what little grain they had and trusted the miller to make it stretch as far as possible. As you listen to the Banshees' keening, you begin to see ghostly images of the mill in its working days. Sacks of grain stacked waiting their turn, the miller testing the flour between his fingers to ensure it was ground to the proper fineness. Children playing around the mill pond while their parents conducted business. The keening also speaks of the gradual changes that led to the mill's abandonment, the coming of larger mills in distant towns, the building of better roads that made it easier for farmers to travel farther with their grain, the slow shift away from the local, intimate scale of commerce that had sustained places like this for centuries. But there is no sadness in the Banshees' song about these changes, no sense that the mill's abandonment represents a tragedy. Instead, her keening acknowledges that all things have their season, that the mill served its purpose well during its time of usefulness, and that its emptiness now allows it to serve a different purpose, as a keeper of memory, and a reminder of how people lived and worked in earlier times. You climb the narrow stairs to the upper level of the mill, where grain once grew, farms where families made their living from the land, the network of paths and roads that connected this place to the larger world. The view reminds you that the mill was never an isolated entity, but part of a larger community, a link in the chain of relationships that made civilization possible. As you prepare to leave the mill, the Banshees' keening shifts to a song of gratitude, acknowledging the service that this place provided and honouring the memory of all who worked here. Her presence ensures that the mill's story will not be forgotten, that future generations will be able to understand something of how their ancestors lived and what they valued. The morning sun has climbed higher while you explored the mill, and its light now falls directly through the doorway, creating a golden path that leads back to the world of the present. You follow this path, carrying with you the mill's lesson about the dignity of work, the importance of serving one's community, and the way that all human endeavours are part of a larger tapestry of connection and mutual support. Your journey continues to a place that local people call a fairy fort, though it is actually the remains of an ancient ring fort built by people who lived on this land more than 1,000 years ago. The circular earthwork sits on a low hill, its banks and ditches still clearly visible despite centuries of weather and the growth of hawthorn trees and blackberry bushes that now cover much of the site. You approach the fort in the golden light of late afternoon, when the sun casts long shadows across the landscape and the air is filled with the sound of birds settling for the evening. This is a place that has been considered sacred for generations, where people still leave small offerings and where children are taught to speak respectfully when they pass by. The fort consists of a circular bank of earth with a deep ditch on the outside, creating a defensive structure that once protected a small community from raiders and wild animals. Archaeological study would reveal post holes where wooden buildings once stood, fragments of pottery and tools that speak of daily life, and evidence of the fires where families gathered for warmth and community. But for the local people, this place has always been associated with the fairy folk, the Aosh, who are said to live in the hollow hills and emerge on certain nights to dance and celebrate. The hawthorn trees that grow on the banks are considered especially sacred, and no one would dare to cut them down or damage them in any way. As you climb, Banshee's presence at the fairy fort is different from anything you have experienced before. Here, she seems more ancient, more connected to the deepest roots of Irish tradition and belief. Her keening carries echoes of the Gaelic language, words and phrases that speak of a time when the boundaries between the world of humans and the world of spirits were more permeable. You find her standing inside the circular enclosure, her grey robes seeming to shimmer with an inner light that reflects the setting sun. She faces the west, where the sun is beginning its descent toward the horizon, and her keening carries the rhythm of ancient prayers and invocations that were spoken here when this place was new. Her song speaks of the original builders of the fort, a small clan who chose this hill for their home because they recognized its special qualities. She tells of the ceremonies they performed here, the seasonal celebrations that marked the turning of the year, the rituals that honored their ancestors and asked for protection from the spirits of the land. As you listen to her keening, you begin to understand that the Banshee herself is part of this ancient tradition, one of the spirits who have always watched over the Irish people and their connection to the land. She is not a harbinger of death, but a guardian of continuity, ensuring that the wisdom and traditions of the ancestors are not lost to time. The keening tells of how the fort eventually became associated with the fairy folk, not because supernatural beings moved in after the humans left, but because the spirits who watched over the place continued their guardianship long after the physical structures had crumbled away. The Banshee herself is one of these guardians, keeping alive the memory of what this place once meant to the people who built it. As evening approaches, you notice that the atmosphere around the fort begins to change. The light takes on a golden quality that makes everything seem slightly otherworldly, and the air becomes filled with a sense of expectancy, as if something wonderful is about to happen. This is the time when the veil between worlds grows thin, when the spirits of place make themselves known to those who have the sensitivity to perceive them. The Banshee's keening grows stronger as the sun touches the horizon, her voice joined by what sounds like a chorus of other voices, ancient and beautiful, singing in harmonies that speak of times before memory. You realize that you are witnessing something. Darkness settles over the fort. Small lights begin to appear among the hawthorn trees, like fireflies, but more purposeful in their movement. These lights dance and weave patterns in the air, creating a sense of celebration and joy that transforms the ancient earthwork into a place of living magic. The Banshee moves among these lights, her presence blessing and sanctifying the dance that unfolds around the circular space. Her keening has become a song of pure celebration, acknowledging the beauty and mystery of existence while affirming the eternal connection between all living things. You watch this ancient ritual unfold with a sense of deep peace and wonder, understanding that you have been granted a glimpse into mysteries that most people never experience. The fairy fort has revealed itself as a place where the sacred and the everyday intersect, where the wisdom of ancestors remains accessible to those who approach with respect and an open heart. As the lights fade and the singing quiets, you know that it is time to leave this sacred place. But you carry with you the blessing of what you have witnessed, the understanding that magic is not something separate from ordinary life, but woven throughout the fabric of existence, for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. Your path now leads toward the coast, where the land meets the sea in an eternal dance of wave and stone. You arrive at a stretch of shore where cliffs rise from a narrow beach and seabirds wheel overhead, their cries mixing with the constant sound of waves breaking against the rocks below. This is a place of power and beauty, where the vastness of the ocean reminds all who stand here of their place in the larger scheme of existence. The beach consists of smooth stones rounded by countless tides, interspersed with pools where seawater collects when the tide retreats. These pools become temporary worlds complete with their own ecosystems, where crabs scurry between rocks and sea anemones wave their tentacles in the gentle current. You walk carefully across the stone beach, feeling the way each step shifts and settles as your weight disturbs the equilibrium of centuries. The sound of your footsteps is absorbed by the much greater sound of the sea itself, that rhythmic breathing that has continued since the world was young, and will continue long after all human concerns have been forgotten. The cliffs that rise behind the beach are layered with geological time, their strata telling the story of ancient seas and clear and strong as it carries across the open spaces between cliff and horizon. You find her standing on a rocky promontory that extends into the sea, her grey robes flowing like sea foam around her as she gazes out toward the horizon, where water meets sky in an unbroken line. From this vantage point, she can see forever, across oceans to distant lands, across time to all the voyages that have begun and ended in these waters. Her keening speaks of all the souls who have made their living from the sea, fishermen who rose before dawn to cast their nets, sailors who carried trade goods to distant ports, emigrants who left these shores in search of better lives in far-off countries. Each of their stories is woven into her song, creating a tapestry of human experience that encompasses both triumph and tragedy. The sea has always been both provider and destroyer for the people of Ireland, offering its bounty while demanding its price in lives lost to storms and accidents. The Banshees' presence here acknowledges both aspects of this relationship, honouring those who have worked the waters while also mourning those who never returned to port. As you stand on the beach listening to her keening, you begin to hear individual stories within the larger song. She tells of young men who left their villages to seek their fortunes in America or Australia, standing on the decks of emigrant ships as their homeland faded into the distance. Her voice carries their homesickness and hope, their determination to build new lives while never forgetting the places that shaped them. The keening also speaks of the women who waited for their return, who watched the horizon for familiar sails, and who sometimes waited in vain. These women learned to live with uncertainty, to find strength in community, and to honour the memory of those who were claimed by the sea while continuing to care for those who remained. You walk along the waterline, where waves wash over your feet and retreat, leaving behind small treasures, shells and sea glass polished smooth by the constant motion of the water, pieces of driftwood carved into fantastic shapes by salt and sand. Each of these objects tells its own story of travel and transformation, of the way the sea changes everything it touches. The Banshee follows along the shore, her presence bringing depth and meaning to this liminal space where elements meet and merge. Her keening carries the sound of all the prayers that have been spoken here, the hopes and fears of people who have looked out. The Banshee's keening intensifies as the sun touches the water, her voice joining with the natural music of wind and wave to create a symphony that speaks of the eternal cycle of departure and return, of the way all journeys eventually lead back to their beginning. Her presence blesses all who have travelled these waters, acknowledging their courage and honouring their stories. As darkness settles over the coast, lighthouses begin to flash their warnings from distant points, their beams sweeping across the water like searching fingers. These lights represent human effort to make safe passage possible, to guide travellers home through dangerous waters, to provide hope in the midst of uncertainty. The Banshee's song gradually fades with the light, but her presence remains, a guardian spirit watching over all who venture onto the waters, or who wait on shore for their safe return. The sea continues its eternal rhythm, and you understand that this is perhaps the greatest lesson the Banshee offers, that some things are larger than human understanding, that our role is not to control but to adapt, to find our place within forces that will continue long after we are gone. Your journey takes you next into the mountains, where ancient peaks rise like sleeping giants against the sky, and paths worn by generations of travellers wind between stone and heather. You begin your climb in the early morning, when mist still clings to the valleys below, and the air carries the thin, clean scent of high places. The path you follow is narrow but well-defined, marked by cairns of stacked stones left by previous travellers to guide those who come after. Each pile of rocks represents a small act of community, a gesture of care for strangers who will walk this way in times to come. The tradition connects you to all who have climbed this mountain before, creating a sense of shared purpose and mutual support. As you gain elevation, the landscape below begins to reveal its larger patterns. Fields and forests that seem separate at ground level show themselves to be part of an intricate design, a patchwork of human activity and natural process that has evolved over thousands of years. Roads appear as threads connecting communities, rivers as silver lines carrying life through the countryside. The higher you climb, the more the everyday world falls away. Replaced by something older and more elemental, the trees become smaller and more twisted by wind. The grass gives way to hardy plants adapted to harsh conditions. Resonate in your bones. You encounter her near a stone circle that crowns one of the lesser peaks, a ring of standing stones so weathered by time and weather that they seem to have grown from the mountain itself. This ancient monument was already old when the first Celtic tribes arrived in Ireland, built by people whose names and stories have been lost to time, but his reverence for high places remains evident in the careful placement of these stones. The Banshee moves among the standing stones with a reverence that speaks of deep understanding, her grey robes seeming to blend with the mist that swirls around the peak. Her keening carries the voices of all who have climbed these heights, in search of perspective, vision, or simply the challenge of testing themselves against the mountain's demands. Her song speaks of hermits and holy people who sought solitude in high places, believing that proximity to the sky brought them closer to the divine. She tells of pilgrims who climbed these paths seeking healing or insight, who left offerings at sacred sites and carried blessings back to their communities in the valleys below. The keening also honours the shepherds who brought their flocks to high pastures, the hunters who tracked game through difficult terrain, the gatherers who knew where to find rare plants that grew only at certain elevations. These practical people understood the mountains in ways that transcended the merely physical, recognizing them as places of power and transformation. As you stand within the stone circle, looking out over the landscape spread below, you begin to understand why ancient people chose to build monuments in such places. The view from the mountaintop encompasses both distance and detail, allowing you to see the larger patterns of existence while remaining grounded in the immediate reality of stone and sky. The Banshee's presence helps you recognize that mountains serve as natural cathedrals, places where the physical and spiritual worlds intersect with particular clarity. Her keening speaks of the way that high places strip away the non-essential, revealing truths that are often obscured by the complexity of life in the valleys below. The wind on the mountaintop carries her voice across vast distances, and you realize that from this elevated position, her keening can reach communities throughout the surrounding countryside. She serves as a messenger between high and low places, carrying prayers and blessings up to the peaks, and sending insight and comfort down to those who cannot make the climb. Settle into your consciousness. The silence here is not empty but full, pregnant with possibilities and ancient wisdom. The Banshee's presence provides a sense of protection and benediction, ensuring that your time on the mountain serves its highest purpose. As afternoon begins its progression toward evening, you prepare to begin your descent, knowing that the journey down will be different from the climb up. The Banshee's keening follows you as you leave the stone circle, her voice carrying blessings for safe travel, and the promise that the mountain's gifts will remain with you long after you return to lower elevations. The path down seems shorter than the climb up, as is often the case when we carry new understanding with us. You move carefully among the rocks and roots, aware that the mountain demands respect throughout the entire journey, not just at its summit. The Banshee's presence accompanies you, ensuring that the transition from high places to ordinary elevations happens with grace and gratitude. Deep within an ancient forest, you discover a hidden glen, where sunlight filters through leaves to create patterns of gold and green on the moss-covered ground. This is a place that feels untouched by time, where massive trees stand as they have for centuries, and where the only sounds are those of wind, water, and the small creatures who make their homes in this woodland sanctuary. The glen centers around a clear spring that bubbles up from underground sources, forming a small pool before overflowing into a stream that winds away between the trees. The water is so pure and still that it serves as a perfect mirror, reflecting the canopy above and creating the illusion of looking up into a second forest that exists in liquid depths. Ancient oaks and ash trees ring the glen, their trunks scarred with the passage of centuries but still strong and vital. These forest giants have witnessed the rise and fall of human civilizations, the changing of seasons beyond counting, the eternal dance of growth and decay that governs all life. Their presence creates a natural cathedral, with branches arching overhead like vaulted ceilings. Ferns carpet much of the glen floor, their fronds creating soft green waves that move gently in the breeze. Wildflowers bloom in scattered patches where sunlight penetrates the canopy. Wood sorrel with its heart-shaped leaves, bluebells that turn portions of the glen into pools of colour, and foxgloves that stand. Robes seem to incorporate elements of the forest itself. Moss-green shadows, bark-brown textures, the silver gleam of moonlight on leaves. She appears to be as much a part of this place as the trees and stones, a spirit of the woodland rather than a visitor to it. Her keening in the forest glen speaks of the old religion, the ancient beliefs that recognized divinity in natural places long before organized churches claimed authority over spiritual matters. She sings of druids who taught their wisdom in forest clearings, of ceremonies performed at springs and sacred groves, of the time when people understood themselves to be part of nature rather than separate from it. The song tells of the deep connection between the Irish people and their forests, relationships that sustained both human and tree communities for thousands of years. She speaks of the knowledge that was passed down through generations, which trees could be safely harvested and which must be left untouched, how to gather forest products without damaging the ecosystem, the proper way to ask permission before taking anything from the woodland. As you listen to her keening, you begin to hear the voices of the trees themselves, ancient and patient, speaking of seasons beyond number and the slow wisdom that comes from staying rooted in one place while reaching always toward the light. The forest giants share their understanding of endurance, of finding strength in flexibility, of the interconnected nature of all life. The Banshees' presence helps you recognize that the glen serves as a sanctuary not only for plants and animals, but for human spirits as well. This is a place where people have always come when they needed healing, whether physical or emotional. The forest offers its own form of medicine, the peace that comes from silence, the perspective that emerges from being surrounded by living things that operate on timescales far longer than human lives. You walk slowly around the glen, noticing details that reveal the richness of life in this protected place. Mushrooms grow in fairy rings on fallen logs, their caps providing homes for tiny insects. A red squirrel chatters from a high branch, its movements creating small showers of leaves that spiral down through the filtered sunlight. Everything here exists in relationship, each element supporting and being supported by the whole. The banshee follows your exploration, her keening serving as a gentle commentary on what you observe. She points out connections that might otherwise go unnoticed. An owl calls from somewhere in the canopy, its voice adding bass notes to the forest symphony. Small rustlings in the undergrowth suggest the movement of creatures who find safety in darkness. The banshee's keening takes on the cadence of a lullaby as night settles over the forest. Her voice becomes a bridge between the human need for comfort and the wild wisdom of the woodland, offering reassurance that there is a place in the natural world for all of creation's children. The forest glen serves as a reminder that peace is always available to those who know where to look for it. You settle beside the spring to rest, lulled by the gentle sound of water flowing over stones and the soft rustle of leaves in the night breeze. The banshee's presence ensures that your sleep here will be deep and restorative, filled with dreams of roots and branches, of seasons turning in their eternal cycle, of the patient wisdom that comes from living in harmony with the natural world. When morning comes, you will leave the glen carrying with you the forest's gifts, a deeper understanding of your place in the web of life, a renewed appreciation for the wisdom of growing things, and the knowledge that sanctuary exists for those who seek it with a sincere heart. Ancient paths crisscross Ireland, worn smooth by the feet of pilgrims who have walked them for over 1,000 years. You find yourself on one of these sacred routes, following in the footsteps of countless souls who have sought spiritual renewal through the simple act of putting one foot in front of the other, while holding a sacred intention in their hearts. The pilgrimage path leads through diverse landscapes, farmland where crops grow in fields blessed by generations of prayers, small villages where churches offer rest and reflection, wild places where pilgrims must rely entirely on their own resources and faith. Each section of the journey offers its own lessons and challenges, its own opportunities for growth and understanding. You begin your walk in the early morning, when dew still clings to the grass beside the path, and the air carries the fresh scent of a world newly awakened. The route is marked by ancient stone crosses and modern signs that help pilgrims find their way. But the most reliable guide is the path itself, worn deep by the passage of so many feet that it seems to pull you forward with its own momentum. The rhythm of walking creates its own form of meditation, allowing your thoughts to set rhythm of the journey itself. She understands that pilgrimage is as much about the walking as it is about the destination. You encounter her at various points along the way, standing beside a holy well where pilgrims traditionally pause to drink and offer prayers, walking alongside the path through a difficult stretch where the way becomes unclear, waiting at a crossroads where the route divides and pilgrims must choose which direction to follow. Her keening speaks of all who have walked this path before you, monks carrying manuscripts to distant monasteries, ordinary people seeking healing or forgiveness, modern pilgrims rediscovering ancient practices in contemporary times. Each walker has brought their own intentions and carried away their own insights, but all have shared the common experience of allowing the path to teach them what they need to know. The song tells of the physical challenges that pilgrimage presents, sore feet and aching muscles, weather that tests endurance, moments of doubt when the destination seems impossibly far away. But it also speaks of the unexpected joys, conversations with fellow pilgrims that open new perspectives, moments of natural beauty that arrive exactly when encouragement is needed, the deep satisfaction that comes from persevering through difficulty. As you walk, you begin to understand that the Banshee sees pilgrimage as a form of prayer in motion, a way of using the body's movement to express what words cannot adequately convey. The act of walking becomes a form of devotion, each step an offering, each mile a deepening of commitment to the inner journey that parallels the physical one. You pass through a village where the local people have maintained the tradition of offering hospitality to pilgrims for generations. An elderly woman provides you with water and simple food, asking nothing in return except that you carry her good wishes to others you meet along the way. Her kindness represents the way pilgrimage creates connections between strangers, building community across boundaries of time and circumstance. The Banshee's presence blesses these exchanges, her keening acknowledging the sacred nature of giving and receiving hospitality. She recognizes that pilgrimage routes create networks of care and support, ways for people to participate in something larger than their individual concerns, while still honoring their own need for spiritual growth. As afternoon progresses toward evening, you reach a stretch of the path that runs along a ridgeline, offering expansive views of the countryside below. From this elevated growth and discovery, her presence offers comfort and encouragement, reminding you that no one walks completely alone, that the path itself provides guidance for those willing to trust its wisdom. As you prepare to find shelter for the night, you recognize that the day's walking has changed something fundamental in your understanding. The simple act of moving forward with intention has created space for insights that might never have emerged in the static environment of ordinary life. The pilgrimage path has fulfilled its ancient purpose, serving as a bridge between seeking and finding. The Banshee's keening softens to a gentle blessing as you settle into rest, her presence ensuring that your sleep will prepare you for whatever tomorrow's walking might bring. The path will continue to teach and guide, just as it has for countless pilgrims throughout the centuries, offering its gifts to all who approach with sincere hearts and willing spirits. Among the rolling hills of the Irish countryside stand the ruins of an ancient monastery, its stone walls weathered by centuries but still bearing witness to the devotion and learning that once flourished here. You arrive at these ruins in the soft light of late afternoon, when shadows stretch long across the grass, and the air carries the peaceful quiet that seems to gather naturally around sacred places. The monastery was built in an age when Ireland was known throughout Europe as the land of saints and scholars, when Irish monks preserved learning and literature, while much of the continent struggled through darker times. The remaining walls and foundations speak of a community that balanced prayer and work, study and service, creating a way of life that sustained both individual souls and the broader culture. You enter through what was once the main gate, now just an opening in a low stone wall, overgrown with ivy and wild roses. The path that once brought visitors and pilgrims to this holy place is still visible, worn into the earth by generations of footsteps and maintained by the occasional visitor who comes here seeking the peace that still emanates from these stones. The layout of the monastery is still clearly visible despite the passage of time. You can identify the remains of the chapel where the community gathered for prayer, the refectory where they shared meals, the scriptorium where monks copied manuscripts by candlelight, preserving the wisdom of ages for future generations. Each area served its purpose in creating a balanced life devoted to spiritual growth and service. In the center of the ruins stands among the monastery ruins carries a quality of deep reverence and historical memory. Her keening speaks of the centuries when this place rang with the sound of bells calling monks to prayer, when the stones echoed with chanted psalms and the scratching of quills on parchment, when the light of learning burned bright in a world often shrouded in darkness. You find her standing in what was once the chapel, her grey robes blending with the weathered stone as if she has grown from the monastery itself. Her keening carries echoes of the prayers that were offered here, the hopes and fears of monks who dedicated their lives to serving something greater than themselves. The quiet joy that comes from a life lived in harmony with spiritual principles. Her song tells of Brother Columba, who illuminated manuscripts with intricate designs that transformed words into works of art. She speaks of Abbot Brendan, whose wisdom drew seekers from across the known world, and of Sister Brigid, who tended the monastery's gardens and knew the healing properties of every plant that grew within its walls. The keening also acknowledges the hardships that the monastery faced. Viking raids that scattered the community and destroyed precious books, political changes that reduced the monastery's influence, the gradual shift in religious practice that left places like this behind. Yet her song finds no tragedy in these endings, recognizing them as part of the natural cycle of growth and change that governs all human institutions. As you explore the ruins, you discover small details that speak of the daily life that once filled these spaces. The worn steps of the tower stairway, polished smooth by countless feet. Niches in the walls where oil lamps once provided light for evening prayers. The remains of a garden where herbs grew for cooking and medicine. The Banshees' presence helps you recognize that the monastery's greatest treasures were not its buildings, but the qualities it cultivated in human hearts. Patience, wisdom, compassion, and the deep peace that comes from aligning one's life with transcendent values. These gifts did not die with the dissolution of the community, but spread outward, carried by those who lived here and by visitors who came seeking guidance. In what was once the scriptorium, you can almost see the monks bent over their work, carefully copying texts that preserved the wisdom of classical antiquity and Christian teaching. The Banshees' keening speaks, calling people to prayer and marking the sacred rhythms of monastic life. As evening approaches, you climb the remaining stairs inside the tower, reaching a point where you can look out over the countryside that the monastery once served. From this vantage point, you can see the network of paths that connected this place to the world beyond, routes that carried both pilgrims seeking guidance and scholars sharing knowledge. The Banshees' keening from the tower speaks of the monastery's role as a beacon of hope and learning, a place where the light of wisdom was kept burning through dark times and shared freely with all who sought it. Her presence ensures that this legacy continues, that the ruins themselves serve as reminders of what human communities can achieve when united by noble purpose. As darkness settles over the ruins, you make your way back to ground level, carrying with you the monastery's greatest lesson, that true monuments are built not of stone, but of the love, wisdom, and dedication that transform individual lives, and through them, transform the world. Hidden in a grove of ancient trees lies a spring that has been revered for its healing properties since before recorded history began. Local people still come here to drink the water and make offerings, continuing traditions that stretch back through countless generations. You discover this sacred place as morning mist rises from the warm springs, creating an atmosphere of mystery and reverence. The spring emerges from a hillside where limestone and older rocks meet, the water filtered through layers of stone and earth that give it distinctive properties. The pool that forms around the spring is lined with smooth stones placed there by human hands, creating a natural basin that makes it easy for visitors to approach the water and fill their containers. Around the spring, generations of pilgrims have left tokens of gratitude and petition. Coins thrown into the clear water, strips of cloth tied to the branches of a massive hawthorn tree, small statues and religious medals placed in niches carved into the surrounding rocks. These offerings create a sense of community that transcends time, connecting present visitors with all who have come here seeking healing. The water itself is remarkably clear and slightly warm, emerging from underground sources with a gentle bubbling that creates its own soft music. Chemical analysis would reveal unusual mineral content, but for those who visit the spring, its power lies not in scientific explanation, but in the faith and hope that have been invested in this. Springs manifests as a guardian and guide for all who come seeking restoration. Her keening carries the sound of flowing water, rising and falling with the rhythm of the spring itself. She has witnessed countless acts of faith and healing here, and her song speaks of the deep human need for hope and renewal. You find her standing beside the hawthorn tree, her fingers gently touching the strips of cloth that hang from its branches like prayer flags. Each piece of fabric represents a specific petition: healing for a sick child, recovery from injury, peace for a troubled heart. The Banshee's keening acknowledges each request, holding them in her memory and adding her blessing to the hopes they represent. Her song tells the stories of those who have been healed at this spring: the young mother whose milk returned after drinking the water with faith, the soldier whose battle wounds closed cleanly after bathing them here, the elderly man whose failing sight was restored through the combination of spring water and sincere prayer. But the keening also speaks of those who came seeking healing and found something different: acceptance of their condition, peace with their mortality, the strength to bear what cannot be changed. The Banshee recognizes that true healing sometimes takes forms that differ from what we initially seek, and her presence offers comfort to all who struggle with suffering. As you kneel beside the spring to drink the water, you feel the cool liquid touch your lips and tongue with a taste that seems to carry minerals and memory in equal measure. The act of drinking connects you to all who have performed this ritual before you, creating a sense of communion that spans centuries and cultures. The Banshee's keening intensifies as you drink, her voice joining with the sound of flowing water to create a harmony that speaks of renewal and restoration. Her presence blesses your act of faith, acknowledging your trust in powers greater than human understanding, while honoring your courage in seeking what you need. You spend time simply sitting beside the spring, allowing its peace to penetrate your consciousness and its healing properties to work in ways that transcend physical understanding. The constant, gentle bubbling of the water creates a form of natural meditation, helping to quiet the mind and open the heart to whatever healing is most needed. Other visitors come and go during your time at the spring. An elderly woman but the hope it represents. The reminder that healing is always possible, even when it comes in unexpected forms. As you prepare to leave the healing springs, you fill a small container with water to carry with you. Not because you believe in its magical properties, but because it will serve as a reminder of the peace and hope you found in this sacred place. The Banshee's keening follows you as you walk away, her blessing ensuring that the spring's gifts will continue to work within you, long after you have returned to ordinary life. The grove of ancient trees seems to close gently behind you as you follow the path away from the spring, but the memory of flowing water and the sound of the Banshee's healing song remain with you as permanent gifts, sources of strength and renewal that you can access whenever life's challenges threaten to overwhelm your spirit. As evening settles over the Irish countryside, you find yourself approaching a small village where smoke rises from chimneys and warm light glows in cottage windows. This is one of those communities that has grown organically over generations, its narrow streets following the contours of the land, and its buildings reflecting the accumulated wisdom of local craftsmen who understood how to create homes that would stand against Atlantic storms. The village centres around a crossroads where the church, the pub, and the post office anchor the community's social and spiritual life. Gardens spill over stone walls with the abundance that comes from soil tended lovingly year after year, and the air carries the scent of peat fires and the evening meal preparations that mark the end of another day's work. You enter the village as the shopkeepers are closing their businesses and children are being called in from their games. There is something timeless about this transition from day to night, a rhythm that has been repeated here for generations, with variations, but never with fundamental change. The pace of life moves according to natural cycles rather than artificial schedules. The church bell tolls the hour, its bronze voice carrying across the rooftops and out into the surrounding countryside, where farmers are finishing their evening chores. The sound connects this village to others like it throughout Ireland, each community marking time with its own bell, while participating in a larger chorus of bronze voices that have rung across the island for centuries. In this village setting, the Banshees' presence becomes that of a community guardian, one who knows the stories of every family and watches over the stone. These are the village's sons who left to fight in distant wars, and her keening speaks their names with reverence, while telling the stories of the families they left behind. Her song carries the voices of mothers who waited for letters that sometimes never came, of fathers who took on the work of absent sons, of sweethearts who married other men but never forgot their first love. The memorial represents not just those who died, but the entire community that was shaped by their absence, the way loss becomes woven into the fabric of small places, where everyone knows everyone else. The keening also speaks of celebration and joy. Harvest festivals where the entire village gathered to share food and music, weddings that united families and strengthened community bonds, the birth of children who carried forward the hopes and dreams of their elders. The Banshee's presence acknowledges that village life encompasses the full spectrum of human experience, from deepest sorrow to greatest joy. As you walk the narrow streets, you notice the way community life continues according to patterns established long ago. Men gather outside the pub to discuss the day's events and share opinions about everything from weather to politics. Women meet at garden gates to exchange news and offer mutual support. Children create their own small adventures in the spaces between adult concerns. The Banshee moves among these evening activities like a benevolent presence, her keening providing a subtle soundtrack that enhances the sense of community and belonging. She recognizes that villages like this one serve as repositories of human wisdom, places where the art of living together in harmony has been refined over generations. You pause outside the pub, where the warm light spilling from the windows reveals glimpses of the social life within. Through the glass you can see friends sharing pints and conversation, their faces animated by the day's stories and the evening's camaraderie. The sound of laughter mixes with traditional music played on fiddle and bodhran, creating the soundtrack of community celebration. The Banshee's keening from outside the pub speaks of the importance of gathering places where stories are shared and relationships are strengthened. She recognizes the pub not as a place of vice but as a vital community institution where news is exchanged, problems are solved through collective wisdom, and the bonds that hold society together are renewed through shared experience. Moving toward the residential street, family life and the way that love expressed in daily routines becomes a form of prayer. She watches over the village's children with particular care, knowing that they carry the future of the community in their hearts and hands. As full darkness settles over the village, lights appear in windows like earthbound stars, each one representing a household where people gather for warmth, comfort, and connection. The Banshee's keening softens to a lullaby that encompasses the entire community, offering protection and peace to all who sleep within its boundaries. You find yourself reluctant to leave this place, where community life continues according to rhythms that have sustained human civilization for millennia. The village represents something precious and increasingly rare, a place where people know their neighbours, where children grow up surrounded by extended networks of care, where the individual and the community exist in healthy balance. The Banshee's blessing follows you as you walk toward the edge of the village, her keening carrying the promise that places like this will endure as long as people value connection over isolation, cooperation over competition, and the wisdom that comes from putting down roots in good soil among good neighbours. Deep in the mountains, where peaks reflected in still water create the illusion of worlds within worlds, lies a lake that has been considered sacred since time immemorial. You reach this hidden body of water after a journey through progressively wilder terrain, following paths that seem to disappear and reappear according to their own mysterious logic. The lake stretches between mountains like a mirror dropped by giants, its surface so still and clear that it perfectly doubles the surrounding landscape. Ancient pines grow down to the water's edge, their branches creating dark patterns against the lighter stone of the cliffs that rise on all sides. This is a place of profound quiet, where even the wind seems to speak in whispers. At the lake's edge stands a small stone chapel, built so long ago that no one remembers who erected it or exactly why they chose this remote location. The building shows the influence of multiple architectural traditions, suggesting that it has been modified and maintained by different groups over the centuries, each adding their own devotional touches while respecting what came before. Inside the chapel, the walls of proper intention will sink to its depths and carry prayers directly to the divine realm. The bottom of the lake is said to be lined with centuries of such offerings. In this place of deep sacredness, the Banshee's presence becomes almost luminous, her grey robes seeming to capture and reflect the light that dances on the lake's surface. Her keening takes on the quality of the water itself, clear, deep, and infinitely peaceful. She has served as guardian of this holy place for longer than human memory can reach. You find her standing at the water's edge, her reflection in the lake creating the image of two banshees, one earthly and temporal, one watery and eternal. Her keening speaks of all who have made the difficult journey to reach this remote sanctuary, drawn by needs that could not be met in more accessible places. Her song tells of hermits who built simple shelters around the lake and spent their lives in contemplation, of seekers who came here during times of great personal crisis, seeking guidance that could only be found in profound silence, of pilgrims who left tokens of gratitude after experiencing visions or healing beside these sacred waters. The keening also speaks of the lake's role as a threshold between worlds, a place where the boundary between physical and spiritual reality becomes permeable. She tells of visitors who have seen figures walking on the lake's surface, of voices heard speaking from its depths, of dreams that come to those who sleep beside its shores and wake with solutions to problems that had seemed insurmountable. You walk slowly around the lake's perimeter, following a path worn smooth by countless pilgrims who have made this same contemplative circuit. Each step seems to deepen the sense of peace that emanates from this place, as if the very ground has been sanctified by the prayers and reverent footsteps of generations of seekers. The Banshee accompanies your circumambulation, her presence ensuring that your journey around the lake becomes a form of walking meditation. Her keening provides a gentle rhythm for your steps, while her ethereal presence reminds you that sacred places exist in multiple dimensions, serving needs that go far deeper than the merely physical. As you complete your circuit of the lake, you understand that this place serves as a repository of accumulated peace, a battery of spiritual energy charged by centuries of sincere devotion and contemplative practice. The Banshee's role, your mind becoming as still as the lake outside. The Banshee's presence provides a sense of protection and blessing, ensuring that your time here serves its highest purpose. The accumulated devotion of centuries creates an environment where prayer comes naturally and peace descends like a gentle benediction. As evening approaches, the lake takes on colours that seem too beautiful for the earthly realm, deep purples and rose gold, silver paths of reflected light that stretch from shore to shore. The mountains around the lake become silhouettes against the darkening sky, their peaks creating a natural cathedral that encompasses the entire sacred site. The Banshee's keening intensifies as the sun sets, her voice carrying across the water to echo off the surrounding cliffs and return multiplied, creating a chorus of blessing that encompasses the entire lake. Her presence transforms the twilight hour into a time of profound spiritual significance, when the veil between worlds grows thin and prayers are heard with particular clarity. You spend the night beside the sacred lake, sleeping peacefully under stars that reflect in the still water like earthbound constellations. The Banshees' gentle keening serves as a lullaby that carries you into dreams filled with healing visions and profound insights that will remain with you long after you leave this holy place. In a valley where wildflowers grow in abundance and sheep graze peacefully on hillsides green as emeralds, you discover a cottage where an ancient craft continues according to traditions passed down through generations of skilled hands. This is the home of a master weaver, where wool becomes cloth through processes that connect the modern world with its deepest roots. The cottage sits beside a stream that provides the water necessary for washing fleece and setting dyes, its walls built of local stone, and its roof thatched with straw that must be renewed each year. Smoke rises from the chimney even in warm weather, for the dyeing process requires constant fires to heat the great vats where yarn takes on colours derived from plants that grow wild in the surrounding countryside. You arrive during the morning hours when the day's work is beginning in earnest. Outside the cottage, fleece hangs on wooden racks to dry after being washed in the stream, each lock of wool cleaned and combed until it gleams like spun sunshine. The air carries the scent of lanolin and the earthy smell of wet wool, mixed with the herbal fragrances of the dye plants that grow in the cottage garden. Through works at a loom that has served her family for generations, its wooden frame darkened by age and polished smooth by countless hands. The pattern she creates is complex, incorporating traditional motifs that carry meaning beyond their aesthetic appeal. Each thread is placed with intention, creating designs that tell stories and preserve cultural memory. The Banshee's presence in the weaver's cottage manifests as an appreciation for the continuity of traditional crafts and the wisdom they preserve. Her keening takes on the rhythm of the loom, rising and falling with the shuttle's passage through the warp threads. She recognizes weaving as a form of prayer in action, a way of creating beauty while maintaining connection with ancestral knowledge. You find her standing beside the loom, watching the pattern emerge thread by thread, her grey robes seeming to incorporate elements of the textiles that fill the cottage. Her keening speaks of the long tradition of Irish weaving, the way this craft has sustained families and communities, while preserving techniques and patterns that might otherwise be lost to time. Her song tells of the women who have worked at this loom, each adding her own variations to traditional patterns, while maintaining the integrity of designs that have been refined over centuries. She speaks of the winter evenings when weaving provided both productive work and social time, when neighbours would gather to share stories while their hands worked steadily at looms and spinning wheels. The keening also acknowledges the sheep whose wool makes the craft possible, honouring the animals whose fleece provides both livelihood and artistic medium. The Banshee recognises the interconnectedness of all elements in the weaving process: the shepherds who tend the flocks, the land that feeds the sheep, the plants that provide dye, the hands that transform raw materials into finished cloth. As you watch the weaver work, you begin to understand the meditative quality of her craft. Each throw of the shuttle, each press of the beater, each careful adjustment of tension creates a rhythm that calms the mind while engaging the body in purposeful action. The weaver's face shows the concentration and satisfaction that come from work that serves both practical and aesthetic purposes. The cottage serves as a repository of textile knowledge, with samples of different weaves hanging from the rafters and baskets full of yarn in colours that span the actual weaving takes place. You spend time simply sitting in the cottage, absorbing the peaceful atmosphere created by purposeful work and traditional skill. The steady rhythm of the loom creates a form of natural meditation, while the accumulating cloth provides visible proof of time well spent and effort rewarded with beauty. The weaver occasionally pauses in her work to adjust a thread or examine the emerging pattern, her practiced eye catching details that might escape less experienced observation. These moments of assessment and correction speak to the high standards that traditional crafts demand, the way excellence is achieved through attention to countless small details. As afternoon progresses, the light in the cottage changes, creating different effects with the colours and textures of the textiles that surround you. The Banshee's presence ensures that you fully appreciate the beauty being created here. the way ancient techniques continue to produce cloth of exceptional quality and timeless appeal. The weaver's work represents more than just the production of textiles. It preserves cultural knowledge and maintains connection with traditional ways of life that honor both human creativity and natural processes. The Banshees' keening acknowledges this deeper significance, recognizing the cottage as a place where past and present weave together, as surely as warp and weft create cloth. As evening approaches and the day's weaving comes to an end, you understand that you have witnessed something precious. The continuation of traditions that connect modern life with its roots, the preservation of skills that serve both practical and spiritual needs, and the quiet satisfaction that comes from work that honors both human creativity and the natural world that provides its raw materials. High on a hill that overlooks a patchwork of green fields and stone walls, you encounter a shepherd, tending his flock with the patience and wisdom that comes from a lifetime spent in the company of sheep and sky. This is one of the old-style shepherds, a man who knows each of his animals individually and who reads weather and season with the accuracy that comes from constant observation. The hill provides an ideal vantage point for watching over the scattered sheep, while also offering a view that encompasses the entire valley below. From this elevated position, the shepherd can see approaching weather, spot potential problems before they become serious, and maintain the vigilant care that successful shepherding requires. The flock itself represents generations of careful breeding and selection. Their days grazing and are beginning to gather for the evening's rest. The shepherd moves among them with the easy confidence of someone who has spent most of his life in their company, his presence calming any anxiety, while his practiced eye assesses the health and condition of each animal. The tools of his trade are simple but effective: a wooden staff that serves multiple purposes, a cloth bag for carrying salt and other necessities, a whistle whose different notes communicate specific commands to the dogs that help him manage the flock. These implements have been refined over centuries to serve the shepherd's needs with maximum efficiency and minimum burden. On this shepherd's hill, the Banshee's presence manifests as an appreciation for the ancient relationship between humans and the animals in their care. Her keening takes on the pastoral quality of wind blowing across open grassland, rising and falling with the natural rhythms that govern life in high places. You find her standing near a cairn of stacked stones that marks an ancient burial site, her grey robes blending with the weathered rocks as she watches the shepherd work. Her keening speaks of the long tradition of shepherding in Ireland, the way this occupation has shaped both landscape and culture while maintaining humanity's connection to the natural world. Her song tells of shepherds throughout the ages who have watched over their flocks from this same hilltop, each generation adding their knowledge to the accumulated wisdom of the calling. She speaks of the skills required: reading animal behavior, predicting weather changes, understanding the subtleties of grassland management, and maintaining the delicate balance between human needs and natural processes. The keening also acknowledges the solitary nature of the shepherd's life, the long hours spent alone with animals and landscape, while the rest of the world conducts its business in towns and cities. The Banshee recognizes that this solitude, rather than being a burden, often becomes a source of wisdom and perspective that benefits the broader community. As you watch the shepherd work, you notice the subtle communications that pass between him and his charges. A particular whistle brings the sheep closer together. A gesture with his staff guides them in a specific direction. His very presence provides reassurance that keeps the flock calm and unified. These interactions speak of relationships built on trust and understanding, rather than force or fear. The shepherd's dogs work as partners in the enterprise, their intelligence and training making possible the management of large flocks across extensive terrain. The Banshee's keening acknowledges these animals and shared knowledge that spans the entire region. Smoke signals or reflected light can carry messages between hills, creating a communication system that predates modern technology by thousands of years. The Banshee's presence helps you understand that shepherding represents more than just animal husbandry. It embodies a way of life that honors the relationship between human intelligence and natural processes. The shepherd serves as a guardian and guide, protecting his charges while working within the larger systems that govern life on the land. As evening deepens and stars begin to appear in the darkening sky, the shepherd prepares to lead his flock to their nighttime shelter. The Banshee's keening intensifies, her voice joining with the wind to create a symphony that speaks of the eternal cycles that govern all life. Work and rest, gathering and scattering, the patient care that sustains life through all seasons. The shepherd's knowledge encompasses more than animal behavior. He understands weather patterns, plant growth, soil conditions, and the complex relationships that maintain the health of the entire ecosystem. The Banshees' song acknowledges this broader understanding, recognizing the shepherd as a keeper of environmental wisdom that modern society often overlooks. You follow at a respectful distance as the flock begins its evening procession down the hill toward shelter. The shepherd's whistle guides the movement, while his dogs ensure that no animal strays from the group. This ancient ritual has been repeated countless times on countless hills. Yet each evening's gathering represents its own small miracle of cooperation and care. The Banshee's blessing follows the flock as they make their way toward safety, her keening serving as a protective prayer that encompasses all who participate in the ancient partnership between humans and animals. The Shepherd's Hill has taught you about dedication, patience, and the wisdom that comes from living in harmony with natural rhythms. Once each week, the small market town comes alive with activity as farmers, crafters, and merchants gather to trade goods and share news from throughout the surrounding countryside. You arrive on market day to find the central square transformed into a bustling hub of commerce and community, where ancient patterns of exchange continue according to rhythms that have sustained rural life for generations. The market square fills with stalls and booths displaying the week's production, fresh vegetables from kitchen gardens, eggs still warm produced from sheep that graze on surrounding hills. These items represent not just commerce, but the continuation of traditional skills that connect the present with its roots. The social aspect of market day proves as important as the economic activity. Neighbors who see each other only occasionally during the week gather to exchange news, discuss community concerns, and maintain the relationships that hold rural society together. Children play between the stalls while their parents conduct business and catch up on local gossip. You move through the market observing the interactions that make this weekly gathering more than just a commercial enterprise. A farmer discusses weather conditions with a fellow grower, sharing observations that will help both make better decisions about planting and harvesting. A craftsperson explains the special properties of her pottery to a customer, passing along knowledge while completing a sale. The Banshee's presence at the market manifests as an appreciation for community cooperation and the preservation of local traditions. Her keening weaves through the busy square like a thread connecting past and present, honoring the continuity of customs that have sustained rural communities through changing times. You find her near the center of the square, where a stone cross marks the traditional heart of the market. Her grey robes seem to incorporate elements from all the goods displayed around her: the earth tones of pottery, the natural colors of woolen cloth, the fresh greens of vegetables just harvested from the garden. Her keening speaks of market days throughout history, when this same square has hosted similar gatherings of people bringing their goods to trade and share. She tells of times when the market served as the primary source of news from the outside world, when traveling merchants brought not just exotic goods, but information about events in distant places. The song acknowledges the role of market day in maintaining community cohesion, the way regular gathering creates opportunities for problem-solving, mutual support, and the kind of face-to-face interaction that builds trust between neighbors. The Banshee recognizes the market as more than a place of commerce. It serves as a forum for democratic participation and community decision-making. As you watch the market activity unfold, you notice the subtle protocols that govern interactions between buyers and sellers. Prices are negotiated with respect and good humor. Quality is assessed with knowledgeable appreciation, and transactions are conducted with the understanding that relationships matter more than individual profit. The Banshee's keening tells of between the market stalls, their laughter adding joy to the busy atmosphere, while they learn through observation how community commerce works. The Banshee's presence blesses these young ones, recognizing that they are absorbing lessons about cooperation, fairness, and the importance of contributing to community welfare. The market also serves as a place where traditional knowledge is shared and preserved. Conversations between vendors often include exchanges of technical information: which varieties of seeds produce the best crops in local soil, how to adjust recipes for different weather conditions, where to find the materials needed for traditional crafts. As the day progresses and the market begins to wind down, vendors pack unsold goods, while customers make final purchases for the week ahead. The Banshees' keening speaks of the satisfaction that comes from a day spent in productive community interaction, the way market day renews social bonds while meeting practical needs. The weekly rhythm of market day creates a pulse that helps regulate community life, providing a regular opportunity for contact and exchange that prevents rural isolation, while maintaining the intimate scale that makes meaningful relationships possible. The Banshees' presence acknowledges this function, recognizing the market as essential to community health. As vendors pack their goods and the square begins to empty, you understand that you have witnessed more than just commercial activity. Market day represents the continuation of social patterns that have sustained human communities for millennia, the kind of face-to-face interaction and mutual dependence that creates resilient societies. The Banshee's blessing follows the departing market-goers as they make their way home with their week's purchases, her keening carrying wishes for prosperity and health until the community gathers again. The empty square seems to hold the echo of the day's activity, waiting patiently for next week's renewal of this ancient ritual. Following a night when Atlantic winds lashed the Irish coast with unusual fury, you find yourself walking through a landscape transformed by nature's power. Trees that stood for centuries have been toppled by the gale, their massive roots exposed like the fingers of buried giants reaching toward the sky. Yet even in this scene of apparent destruction, signs of resilience and renewal are already beginning to appear. The storm has rearranged the familiar patterns of countryside, creating new watercourses where runoff carved temporary channels, exposing stone walls that had been hidden beneath generations of ivy growth, and opening views that had been blocked by vegetation where they block nothing, as if the wind had been selective in its destructive choices. The larger trees, those that might have seemed most secure in their size and age, often show the greatest damage, while smaller, more flexible plants have bent with the wind and emerged largely unscathed. The aftermath reveals layers of history normally hidden from view. Uprooted trees expose archaeological features that had been buried beneath their root systems for generations. Fragments of pottery, worked stones, traces of structures that tell of human occupation reaching back through time. The storm has become an inadvertent archaeologist, revealing secrets that had been preserved in darkness. In this landscape of transformation and revelation, the Banshee's presence manifests as a guide through change, helping to find meaning and opportunity within apparent loss. Her keening carries the sound of wind through broken branches, but also notes of renewal, and the promise that life will adapt and continue despite disruption. You find her standing beside a massive oak that has been split by lightning, its trunk rent but not completely severed. New growth already shows green at the edges of the wound, and the tree's remaining root system continues to draw nutrients from the soil. Her keening speaks of resilience and the way that life finds ways to continue, even after suffering severe damage. Her song tells of other storms that have swept across this landscape throughout history, each one seeming catastrophic to those who lived through it, but ultimately contributing to the ongoing process of renewal that keeps ecosystems healthy. She speaks of the way forests regenerate after wind damage, how clearings created by fallen trees provide opportunities for new species to establish themselves. The keening also acknowledges the human cost of such storms: homes damaged by falling trees, farms disrupted by flooding, the anxiety that comes from witnessing forces beyond human control. The Banshee's presence offers comfort to those dealing with storm damage, while helping them understand that such events, though difficult, are part of larger natural cycles. As you continue through the transformed landscape, you begin to notice the positive changes the storm has brought. A stream previously hidden by undergrowth now runs openly through a natural meadow created by fallen trees. Wildflowers that had been shaded out for years are already beginning to bloom in newly opened clearings. The Banshee's keening speaks of adaptation and the way of fallen branches, while small mammals explore pathways that had been blocked before the wind rearranged the forest floor. The storm's destruction becomes the foundation for new forms of life and relationship. You discover a section where the wind has exposed a hillside spring that had been hidden for generations beneath a grove of trees. The water bubbles up from underground sources, creating a new pool that will likely become a gathering place for wildlife, and perhaps, in time, for human visitors who will find it beautiful and refreshing. The Banshees' presence near the newly revealed spring speaks of hidden blessings that sometimes emerge from apparent disasters, the way disruption can reveal resources and opportunities that had been present but unrecognized. Her keening celebrates these discoveries while acknowledging the violence that was required to bring them to light. Local people are beginning the work of clearing paths and assessing damage, their efforts creating new patterns of cooperation as neighbours help each other deal with storm aftermath. The Banshees' song acknowledges these human efforts, recognizing the way communities often grow stronger through shared challenges. As you observe the cleanup efforts, you see how traditional knowledge serves the community well during recovery periods. Elderly residents know which trees are likely to fall in future storms and should be removed preventively, while younger people provide the physical energy needed for the heavy work of clearing and rebuilding. The storm's aftermath has created a temporary landscape, one that will continue evolving as natural processes respond to the changes wrought by wind and rain. The Banshees' keening speaks of patience and the long perspective needed to understand how apparent destruction contributes to the health and renewal of living systems. As afternoon light filters through the broken canopy, creating new patterns of sun and shadow, you understand that you have witnessed not just the aftermath of destruction, but the beginning of regeneration. The Banshees' presence ensures that both the loss and the potential inherent in change are properly honoured and understood. At the crest of a windswept hill where ancient builders chose to erect monuments that would endure for millennia, you encounter a circle of standing stones that has watched over the Irish countryside since before recorded history began. These massive blocks of local granite were shaped and positioned with enormous effort, creating a sacred space that continues to inspire wonder and reverence after thousands of years. The stone circle consists of 12 upright blocks, arranged in a perfect ring around a central space, their original shapers. You approach the circle as morning light strikes the eastern stones, illuminating the subtle variations in colour and texture that make each monument unique despite their common origin in nearby quarries. The positioning of the stones shows careful consideration of astronomical alignments, with gaps between certain stones framing significant points on the horizon, where sun or moon rises at important times of the year. Inside the circle, the quality of sound changes noticeably, as if the arrangement of stones creates an acoustic environment designed to enhance human voice and ritual activity. Modern scientific analysis might explain this effect in terms of sound reflection and resonance, but for those who use the circle for ceremonial purposes, such explanations matter less than the tangible sense of sacredness the space provides. The ground within the circle shows signs of continued use, areas worn smooth by countless feet, rings of stones that mark recent fire ceremonies, small offerings left by contemporary visitors who continue to recognize this place as special. These modern touches connect the ancient monument with living tradition, demonstrating its continued relevance to spiritual seekers. At this site of ancient power and enduring mystery, the Banshee's presence manifests with particular intensity. Her keening resonates between the stones, creating harmonics and echoes that seem to awaken voices sleeping in the granite itself. She serves as a bridge between the monument's prehistoric origins and its continued significance in contemporary times. You find her standing at the center of the circle, her grey robes seeming to capture and reflect the subtle colours hidden in the weathered stone surfaces. Her keening carries echoes of ceremonies performed here throughout the ages, from the original builders' dedication rituals to modern gatherings of people seeking connection with ancient wisdom. Her song speaks of the enormous communal effort required to create this monument, the way entire communities must have worked together to quarry, shape, transport, and erect these massive stones. She tells of the planning and engineering knowledge needed to create alignments with celestial events, the mathematical understanding required to achieve the circle's perfect proportions. The keening also acknowledges the spiritual purposes the circle has served throughout its long history. Seasonal celebrations that marked the turning of the year, initiation ceremonies that marked important transitions in individual lives, healing rituals that drew upon the special energies believed you pass. The monument's builders chose this hilltop location carefully, selecting a site that offers views in all directions, while also being visible from great distances across the surrounding countryside. From within the circle, You can see other ancient sites dotting the landscape. Burial mounds, smaller stone circles, the remains of hill forts that speak of a sophisticated culture that understood both astronomy and architecture. The Banshees' presence helps you recognize that the standing stones serve as focal points in a larger sacred landscape, part of a network of ceremonial sites that connected ancient communities with each other and with the natural forces they sought to understand and influence. Her keening speaks of pilgrimage routes that once connected these sites, paths walked by people seeking wisdom and spiritual renewal. Archaeological evidence suggests that the circle remained in active use for many centuries after its construction, with different cultures adapting its ceremonies to their own beliefs, while maintaining respect for its original sanctity. The Banshees' song acknowledges this continuity of purpose, the way sacred places transcend the specific cultures that create them. As the sun reaches its zenith and light floods the circle from directly above, the stones cast sharp shadows that create temporary geometric patterns on the ground within the ring. This interplay of light and shadow demonstrates the builders' sophisticated understanding of solar movements and their desire to create a space that would interact dynamically with celestial cycles. Modern visitors often report unusual experiences within the stone circle: heightened sensitivity to natural energies, vivid dreams, moments of clarity or insight that seem to come from sources beyond ordinary consciousness. The Banshees' keening acknowledges these contemporary mysteries while connecting them with the ancient purposes for which the circle was originally built. As afternoon progresses toward evening, you prepare to leave the sacred circle, carrying with you a renewed appreciation for the sophistication and spiritual depth of Ireland's prehistoric cultures. The standing stones have served as a reminder that human beings have always sought connection with forces larger than themselves, creating monuments that endure long after their builders' names are forgotten. The Banshee's blessing follows you as you walk away from the circle, her keening carrying wishes that the wisdom gained within the ring of stones will continue to guide and inspire long after you have returned to ordinary. Has that golden quality that transforms ordinary countryside into something magical, and the air carries scents that seem to awaken memories you didn't know you possessed. The path winds through fields where hay has been recently cut, leaving behind stubble that crunches softly beneath your feet and releasing the sweet scent of dried grass into the warm air. Stone walls line the way, their surfaces covered with lichen and moss that speak of great age, while wild roses cascade over their tops in cascades of white and pink blooms. You realize that this journey has been more than just a series of encounters with the Banshee in various landscapes. It has been a pilgrimage of the spirit, a gradual awakening to truths that had always been present but never fully recognized. Each location, each manifestation of the grey-robed figure has contributed to a growing understanding of life's deeper patterns and meanings. The cottage that comes into view as you crest a small hill seems both strange and familiar, as if you are seeing a place from a dream or a half-remembered story. Smoke rises from its chimney, and light glows warmly in its windows, creating an image of welcome and comfort that draws you forward with increasing certainty that this is where your journey was always meant to end. As you approach the cottage garden gate, you realize that the Banshee has been walking beside you, though you cannot say exactly when she appeared or how long she has been your companion on this final stretch of path. Her presence no longer seems mysterious or otherworldly. Instead, it feels as natural as the evening breeze or the call of birds settling for the night. Her keening has evolved throughout your journey from something strange and haunting to a song that feels like part of your own heartbeat, a melody that speaks of connection and belonging, of the way all journeys eventually lead home, to places that exist as much in the heart as in physical location. Her voice has become a source of comfort rather than mystery. The cottage garden overflows with flowers and vegetables in the abundance that comes from soil tended with love and knowledge passed down through generations. Bees work among the blossoms in the slanted evening light, their humming adding harmony to the Banshee's gentle keening as you push open the gate and walk up the stone path toward the front door. Inside the cottage, you sense rather than see the presence of others. Family members who have been waiting for your return, friends who have kept the home fires burning during your absence, ancestors whose love presence throughout your journey. Her grey robes seem to shimmer with all the colours you have encountered: the green of forest glens, the blue of sacred lakes, the gold of harvest fields. the silver of moonlight on stone. Her song speaks of endings that are really beginnings, of the way that understanding gained through experience becomes wisdom that can be shared with others, of the eternal cycle of departure and return that governs all meaningful journeys. She acknowledges that your travels through Ireland's mystical landscapes have prepared you for the greater journey of living with consciousness and purpose. As you cross the cottage threshold, the Banshees' keening transforms into a blessing that encompasses not just your safe return, but your future journeys, both physical and spiritual. Her presence has served its purpose, helping you understand that guidance and protection are always available for those who know how to listen and where to look. The door closes behind you with the soft sound of wood settling into familiar grooves, and you understand that while this particular journey has ended, the lessons learned and the connections made will continue to enrich and guide your life. The Banshee's wisdom lives on in your increased sensitivity to the sacred dimensions of ordinary experience. Inside the cottage, the fire burns warmly in the grate, and simple food waits on the table. The familiar objects of daily life surround you, chairs worn comfortably by use, books whose wisdom has been tested by time, photographs that capture moments of love and celebration. This is home in its deepest sense, the place where you are known and loved completely. The Banshee's final gift comes as you settle beside the fire, feeling the journey's fatigue dissolve in warmth and comfort. Her keening has become so much a part of your consciousness that you realize it will never completely fade. Instead, it will remain as an inner voice of wisdom and comfort, a reminder of the sacred dimensions that permeate ordinary life. Through the cottage windows you can see the Irish countryside settling into night, the fields and hills and distant mountains that have been the setting for your encounters with mystery and wisdom. The landscape holds all the stories you have witnessed, all the lessons you have learned, all the beauty you have experienced during this transformative journey. The Banshee's presence gradually fades as sleep approaches, but her blessing remains as a permanent gift, the understanding that every place is sacred to those who approach it with reverence, that guidance is always available to those who know how to listen, and that the journey toward wisdom nurtures all who dwell within its embrace. Her final lesson is that mystery and everyday life are not separate realms but different aspects of the same sacred existence. In the morning, you will wake renewed and ready to carry the Banshee's gifts into ordinary life, but now, in this moment of perfect peace beside the fire, her gentle keening serves as a lullaby that carries you into dreams filled with the beauty and wisdom of Ireland's eternal landscapes, and the timeless spirit who watches over all who journey with sincere hearts. The cottage settles around you with the comfortable sounds of a place well lived in and deeply loved, and the Banshee's final blessing whispers through the rooms like a promise that home is not just a place, but a state of being available to all who understand that love and wisdom are the only treasures worth seeking, and that every journey, no matter how far it may lead, eventually brings us back to the truth that we are never alone in this beautiful and mysterious world.